That was the best wave of my life. Sometimes you got to start the session, especially in terms of big wave surfing. You only have about a 3-hour window or 4-hour window before that adrenaline wears off. If you're going to surf, just understand that this is kind of a lifelong pursuit.
All right, well, welcome to the Basis Podcast. We got my buddy Derek Dunfee here with us today. Super honored. He's a professional big wave surfer, won the XXL Big Wave Award, professional surf photographer. His work has been featured in the Surfer's Journal and other tons of incredible magazines, and he's just an all-around awesome human being, humble dude. The way we met, actually, I think it was either at your book launch party or Kai Lenny's book launch party at Pilgrim. That was actually kind of a fun night. We just ended up all going out to dinner and having a night out in Brooklyn, New York. It was a fun time, but we've kept in touch since. And now I'm lucky enough to get to interview you for this podcast. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate you having me, and I'm stoked that you're having me on. I'm really happy with what you're doing with the podcast and all your surf tips and everything. So I'm really just honored to be here, stoked. And you and your brothers have always been really good to me, and I consider you guys my friends. And anytime I come out to New York, it's been just a really awesome experience for me. So I really appreciate it.
Cool, man. Well, so I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about your book, which is amazing. Everybody definitely needs to grab it. It's called Waking Up in the Sea, and it's very unique. It's very different from the majority of surf books I've ever read. A lot of surf books, I mean, they're incredible. You hear about these adventures and whatnot, but most of the time they feel kind of episodic, and it'll just go from one crazy wave to another crazy wave, surfing this break and surfing that break. And there's always interesting detail, but a lot of the times it kind of becomes monotonous in a way. And your book was one of the first books that I've read that really takes the user on, or the person, who's reading it on this like emotional journey with you. There's like this actual narrative character arc, which usually is missing from surfing books. Now there's I'll get that arc in climbing books. And the one other book that I'll put your book in the same category with is Barbarian Days by William Finnegan, because you really do follow on that arc. But then that book is also a different species as well, because that's like no pictures, but this has amazing photography and all that. So I just want to say that like everybody needs to go and read this book. It's incredibly unique. It's raw, it's poetic, it's beautiful, it's emotional. It must have been quite the journey putting this thing together. I mean, how long did it take you to create this book?
It took me about 3 years to make the book. I spent probably the first 2 years writing it, and then it took me about 6 months to do the layout, because I did the layout and InDesign as well. Maybe it took me about 4 or 6 months to do the layout, and then besides that, it took about 4 months or even longer to just get it published and get the books in my possession. So it took me about 3 years to kind of get the book from start to finish. And about 3 years.
Wow. Well, I mean, I can tell that you poured your heart and your soul into this book. It's something totally different. And I think, you think about a lot of books that maybe other pro surfers have written or whatever. Usually it's not, I mean, they're athletes first and foremost, and you're an athlete as well, but you're also an artist. And I think it really shows in the book, the way you wrote it, the imagery and all of that. So it's really incredible. And I just remember, so I read it for the second time in preparation for this interview, and I was just totally drawn in. And the first, the prologue that you included about, and this was actually written, I think, by your buddy, Sean Dollar. You guys were surfing Cortez Bank. But I remember the first time I read it, when I read this prologue, I was like, whoa. And I couldn't put the book down. I read the entire thing in one sitting. And I think everybody that listens to it is going to be like, I need to get this book as well. Would you mind reading us this prologue? I mean, I just thought it was just incredible.
Yeah, I can read it. I had, Sean write the prologue because there's certain things I went through, and I wasn't sure kind of what was real and what wasn't. And when I drowned at Cortez Bank, and so I had Sean Dollar. Really, I wanted him to be in his voice because he saved my life, and just to give kind of a different perspective of what had kind of happened. So I'll read that for you right now. Let's see here. All right, and this is by Sean Dollar. Cortez Bank is the scariest and most violent big wave spot I've ever surfed. On this day, I was taking a break from surfing and doing water safety on my PWC. I saw Derek go down on a big one, so I started to track his wave. Following the white water line closely, I knew generally where he was going to come up, but as I buzzed around that zone, I started to panic because he didn't come up for a really, really long time. He eventually popped up right next to my ski, just a few feet away. When I finally swung around to see his face, he looked like a ghost. I didn't know it then, but he was unconscious and unresponsive, like he was frozen in time. Knowing we were square in the impact zone with another set approaching, I screamed at Derek to grab the sled. All he had to do was put his arm out and grab it. I kept screaming, "Derek, grab the sled." I yelled at him for so long that I finally realized he was out cold. "Get the fucking sled," I yelled again. With only seconds left, I knew I had to do something drastic. I put the ski into reverse and rammed the rescue sled into his head. I screamed again, "Grab the fucking sled." Still nothing. I was trying to give him every moment I had, but as this massive wave approached us, I gave the ski a little gas to separate myself and safely go over the top of the wave. I was really close to going over the falls. As I saw that, I just barely cleared the wave. I watched in horror as Derek went back over the falls in slow motion into the worst part of the wave. I still remember looking at his face as he went up and over, eyes half open. I'll never be able to unsee that look of pure and utter helplessness. Then he disappeared. It was a big set with multiple waves, so I had to wait for all the turbulence to pass before I could look for him. Every second that went by, I knew my chances of finding him decreased. After the set, I returned to the zone where I last saw him. He was gone. I couldn't find him anywhere. So much time went by. Easily 10 minutes. I'd zigzag all through the Cortez whitewater line looking for any sign of movement, and when I'd reached the end of it, I would haul ass all the way back outside and start over. Just when I was about to jet back to the boat and call in for more help, I saw a black speck way on the inside, almost drifting around the backside of the massive underwater shoal. It was Derek. When I got to him, he was floating on his side. The inflatable wetsuit Derek was wearing had flotation, but only on the back. He was leaning over at an awkward tilt. No surfboard, no movement. Although he was now conscious and breathing, Derek wasn't responsive and wouldn't look at me. I helped Derek onto the sled and took him back to safety. When I dropped him off at the boat, I asked him again, "Derek, tell me you're okay." He didn't answer. And that,
so heavy.
That was December 22nd, 2002 at Cortez Bank, 100 miles off San Diego, by Sean Dollar.
Man, that's wild. Like I was literally getting chills listening to you to go through that.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to read, honestly.
Yeah,
it was hard for me to. It took me a long time to be able to like talk about this experience without crying and getting emotional. Yeah. And I still kind of feel like that way right now. I was trying not to think about even what I was just reading too much, or I'd probably just get really emotional and just kind of break down. But I'm happy I'm in a better place now that I can kind of talk about what happened to me. And it wasn't. And there's just there's a lot to that like I didn't. It was kind of a bizarre. The whole thing was just terrifying, super traumatic. It was one of the reasons why I eventually kind of quit surfing big waves. But it wasn't until a period of time afterwards that when I spoke with Sean, that he had told me that I was knocked out, because I didn't know that I was knocked out, and then I went up and over and then had like a 3 or 5 wave hold down. It was, it was really bizarre, because even when he told me I was knocked out, I felt like I was conscious, like I was there, even though I was face down and my eyes were shut. So it's just kind of it took me a little while. I'm still trying to kind of figure out just what happened to me. I mean, I know what happened to me, but it's just kind of scary and traumatic. But I'm also trying to look at that whole experience as just a learning experience that I can grow from, mentally and even physically, or just everything, just as a person, just grow and try to look at it as, I'm lucky that Sean saved my life and that I'm here. Because there could have been another time that, one of my good friends wasn't there and that I would have just been gone.
Right. Well, it sounds harrowing, but you've been able to channel it into greater good. I know that one of your missions has been being an advocate and just raising awareness around, concussions and how that affects things in the big wave world. And it seems like it's having an effect. I mean, a lot of surfers now seem to be a lot more honest and transparent about it, which has been great, right? I think
yeah. I mean, that's, part of the reasons why I wanted to write the book is to help me kind of as therapy for me to write it and to kind of grow as a person and get through it so I can talk about it with other people without getting emotional, without crying. And then also to bring awareness to concussions and how they can really impact professional or just anybody. And then also just mental health awareness, because throughout my concussions and then even just being kind of so traumatized by that event that I kind of went through some weird emotional states. And so to bring awareness to just depression and maybe even people just going through high stress or those types of things, so that, a lot more people can be open about talking about it. And it's okay to, let people know that you're going through a hard time and that you need help. Yeah.
I think that is so important. And you're right. I think that pertains not just to, extreme athletes at the very pinnacle like you, getting a concussion, but anybody going through any struggle. The more you bottle it in, the harder it can be. And I think that darkness can fester, and it's a lot better to open up and reach out to your friends when you need it, and that's so cool that you are kind of at the forefront of opening that up, beginning that discussion. And I think, now you have Koa Smith, you have Albie Layer, even, Sterling Spencer, who's not even a big wave surfer, but they're talking about it. And I think that just general awareness is definitely a good thing. And mental health in general, I think people are just becoming a lot more open to talking about it.
Yeah. I mean, it can be tough for professional surfers that are trying to keep their sponsors, because if they're as super honest about the fact that they might need a 1-year break or 2-year break so they get their mind and their head right, that they'll probably lose their sponsors and then maybe their entire career. But those are kind of choices I think a lot of surfers or people that have had a bad head injury that need to kind of make, if you're choosing your mental health over. But it's hard. It's hard for for a lot of people. Like even myself, who, I committed my life to trying to be the best big wave surfer, and I had to make a choice with my mental health, I trying to heal myself and get better, or continue on the path and really kind of destroy my brain and my mental health, and which could lead to depression or if not suicide. Yeah,
well, I think that's what made this book so powerful. It was just raw and honest in a way that I don't think most, surf books are. And it's really incredible to see all the ups and the downs and just going through that entire journey with you. So I was actually thinking of just kind of going back to the beginning of the journey. I mean, growing up in Windansea, surfing there. What was that like growing up in surfing around there?
I'm really lucky to grow up. I grew up living pretty close to Windansea Beach, and I feel very fortunate because it's a beautiful area, really good waves. There's some good reef breaks. So I was able to get a lot of practice and understanding of how different waves break. I mean, I just had a big variety of different types of waves between the reefs and even Black's Beach, and a lot of really, really good surfers. And on top of that, there's such a rich history of really amazing surfers that came out of Windansea in this area and through the Windansea Surf Club. There's just a lot of history here, and I really admired and loved the rich history along with all these great surfers, and it really kind of pushed me to want to just be the best kind of surfer I can be and push my surfing wherever it could be. I always kind of lost in surf contests. I didn't really I don't know what it was. I just didn't have the patience or the competitive drive for certain things, and so I really focused on my just pushing myself and barrel riding, tube riding, and that slowly progressed into big wave surfing.
Oh, right. Okay. So, because I remember reading a passage, and they were talking about how you ended up in Hawaii. Were you sponsored getting over there, or were you just went out there on your own as a young kid?
Yeah, I was sponsored by Volcom when I was about 14 years old, and that's when I first went over to a house that they had over there, and that was just a really crazy learning experience for me, because there's a lot of kids that I became friends with that were already surfing in big waves at a very young age, like 12 to 14 years old. They're surfing big waves kind of already, and it's kind of ingrained in their lives and their families. They're taken to the beach and put into kind of bigger wave. I don't know. It's way more a part of their lifestyle for this ocean awareness and being around these bigger waves and maybe being taught how to survive or how to help. There's just a lot to it that when I went there, I really just learned a lot about different waves, like Sunset Beach was the first time I saw that wave, and just really getting out there and seeing some other kids that were around my age and my size, like small, catching big waves. And so I felt like it was just a whole different world. And I think in terms of my imagination and certain things like that, I really knew I had a lot I could grow, and that these kids were just kind of on a different level than me, and that since I was fortunate enough to be over there as a sponsored surfer, I had time to kind of slowly grow and catch bigger waves, and just being out there I think was really helpful.
Yeah, well, there was this one story, I forget who it was. You were out there, I think you were at Sunset, and you're just chilling, and then Noah Johnson walks up to you. Could you tell us about that story?
Yeah, in a nutshell, I didn't want to surf Sunset Beach. It was pretty big. I mean, it must have been, bigger than 12 or 15 foot on the face at the time. And I didn't want to surf. I felt like it was kind of too big for me, and I had a lot of reasons I didn't want to surf it. And I was just kind of by myself, and Noah Johnson came up, and he's one of the best big wave surfers ever. Like, he's been in the Eddie Aikau a lot. He has a couple really famous rides. He's became I think a stuntman for a long time, but he was something in his big wave surfing was something I really admired, and he came up, and really I tried to give him a bunch of excuses why I didn't want to go out, whether it was my breath holding or surfboards or equipment and all this stuff, and every single excuse I gave him, he gave me a reason why that wasn't enough. And it came down to me saying I don't even have a big enough board. And he said, well, here, I have an extra board, in my truck. Here you go, just come out and paddle out with me. So every excuse I had, he just shut it down and pretty much took me out there. So, really just Noah Johnson gave me a lot of advice and wouldn't let me give him any excuses, and took me out to Sunset, and I had just a really big learning experience. I caught a couple waves that I'll never forget, and I got worked on a couple waves, and it really gave me the courage to kind of just keep going and surf those types of waves.
Yeah. Well, the story that I read there was that I think you were sitting on the beach, and your excuse was, oh, I can't hold my breath for that long. And then he was just like, all right, well, let's see if you can hold your breath from the wave breaking till it gets into shore. And then you did it, and you're like, oh, crap, I got to go out.
Yeah, that was something, I couldn't believe. He's just like, yeah, if you can hold your breath from when it breaks to when it hits the shore, you'll be fine. And it's funny because I saw him, as an adult, and I tried to bring up that story to him, and he didn't have much memory of it, because I think he was just so deep into his big wave surfing career that was just another day for him. And so for me, I tried to bring it up because I'd seen him since, and I tried to even give him tell him thank you, and all this praise for helping me, and it was just another day for him. So it was kind of funny. And so I still have a lot of respect for him, and I'm really lucky for that experience.
Although I mean, I want your opinion on this. It seems kind of like sandbagging somebody, though, because holding your breath above land and then holding your breath when you have like a gigantic wave at sunset pummeling you is a totally different thing, right?
It is. And I think maybe because I was a sponsored surfer and he knew I was like in, good shape as a sponsor, even though I was only like 14, I think he probably just knew he had to kind of say these certain things to get me out there. And it was these big things that kind of, when I look back, were really important to me in getting out there. I mean, there's certain stuff like that I wouldn't do with other people. But yeah, I don't know, maybe he believed in me or something, but it was huge for me. And yeah, there's a lot of people I wouldn't take out to Big Sunset Beach, but he, I think, saw through that.
I think he was trying to sucker you into it, is what I think. And I don't know if he would, if I would recommend that to the everyday surfer thinking about surfing sunset and just trying to hold your breath.
No, there's so much to it, but there's certain things, I guess, when I was, younger that were more common with trying to, I don't know. I have no idea where that came from, but I'm grateful that it happened. Yeah.
And you said you immediately, you were like, what's interesting is you felt so much fear leading up to this, right? Like you're coming up with every excuse. And then you said, then you got out there and you just loved it. Was it just this immediate, like, I realized this is my element. This is where I'm going to thrive. Was that just an immediate thing? What was that like?
I mean, yeah, I caught a wave. I remember catching a wave and the West Bowl took me out. Like I got worked on a wave. And I was riding a 7.6, which is the biggest board I'd ever ridden up until that point. And I got just worked on this wave. And there's something about, I think that when I got worked, I didn't panic underwater. And after the entire beatdown, when I came up and when I was back in the channel, it definitely gave me courage. Like, yes, I am in good enough shape for this and I can do this. And I started to actually believe in myself instead of create these excuses. And it was, so it really just, it was one of the rare times that, the wipeout actually gave me a little bit of courage going back out and in myself.
Yeah, that's interesting. Sometimes when I'm surfing bigger waves, I don't know if you would recommend this, but sometimes what I'll do is I'll actually just like not intentionally wipe out, but I'll think like to myself, like, I just kind of want to get one out of the way. Because then the fear of it, the idea of it is usually worse than the actual thing itself, and then I'll kind of get into the zone. But
yeah, sometimes you got to start the session, just get it going. Otherwise, especially in terms of big wave surfing, you can, you only have about a 3-hour window or 4-hour window before that adrenaline wears off, and then you're way more exhausted than you normally would be. So sometimes if you're waiting a couple hours and you're starting to get tired, it's almost better to not catch a wave and just go straight in. So sometimes I would just try to get the session started, because if you wait 2 or 3 hours or even longer, your legs might not be working in terms of the blood flow. And then also if your adrenaline starts wearing off and you're starting to feel tired, you're probably way more exhausted than you even realize, and you might not be able to handle the wipeout that you think you can, just because you're just way more tired and that adrenaline's gone. And there's a lot to that. So like sometimes I definitely would try to get one right when I get out there, try to get out of the way, and then start the session with that, whether I make it or not.
Wow, that's fascinating. I never even thought about the adrenaline wearing off, because I always thought with big wave surfing there's a lot of waiting around because you have to be super picky, obviously. So I could always conceive of people being out there for longer than 3 hours, but I didn't realize that there was like this literal physiological limit where your adrenaline starts to run out. So that's super interesting. I just think that there's this like interesting interplay. I think a lot of normal people think that big wave surfers are anybody that does anything gnarly. They don't feel fear, but I mean, just from reading your book, like clearly you feel fear. Clearly we all feel fear, but it's there's something about you that you're drawn to it, and then getting onto the other side of the fear, right? Is that how you would think about it for yourself personally?
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot to it. I mean, just kind of, I pretty much committed my life to surfing big waves and learning how to be the best big wave surfer through training and through reading books, different things that really helped me be the best athlete. And on top of the ocean knowledge. So there's a lot of stuff that that I was trying to prepare for, but it's really about also being smart and not surfing when it's the waves. Like, it's just like anywhere, if you pull up and it's onshore and crappy, that you most likely won't paddle out. But sometimes with big wave surfing, you might travel for a long period of time, or it might be the only or the first big swell of the season, and so you kind of feel like you have this obligation to go out there and just catch a wave to start the big wave, type of thing. So it's really about being smart and not, I guess, not surfing if the conditions aren't ideal, because it's just like surfing anywhere. If you pull up and it's sunny and glassy and the conditions are really good, like, I'm gonna be so pumped to get out there. It's like I can't control myself. I can't get out there fast enough. But if it's onshore and I have to talk myself into going out, there's certain things that maybe I shouldn't be surfing. And then also, kind of what I learned from my career with concussions, and don't want to hit your head too many times. I mean, if you have a concussion surfing when it's crappy, you're going to miss the day of the year, which will, so it's about kind of being patient and understanding this is kind of a lifelong pursuit, and not to be in such a rush to make it happen.
And I think that's really good advice that applies not just to like proper big wave surfers, but just surfers in general, right? I can imagine people that are getting into surfing, larger waves, they might just see it's big and think, okay, here's my chance, I gotta go, but not realizing, there can be very real consequences to surfing bigger waves. And I think just realizing the
yeah, I was just saying, not only for your own safety, but if you're not quite prepared and you're putting other people in danger, because they're going to have to come save you, and they're going to have to come rescue, and they're putting their lives in danger by whether it's like a big wave water safety or even the local lifeguards, so it's like being smart, not only for your own safety, but for the safety of the lifeguards and people that are watching on the beach, just so they don't have to risk their lives to come save you.
Hey everyone, it's Van. Hopefully you've been enjoying the podcast. Hopefully you've been listening to some good stories, getting some good tips that are helping you improve as a surfer. If so, make sure to subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review. It'll only take you literally a few seconds, and share it with your friends. That's the best way you can support me, so I can continue to create awesome new content for you. So thanks. Well, I thought what was interesting is the way you approached Mavericks, right? So I think, that's where you got your... Is that where you got your XXL award or XXL award?
Yeah. Mavericks was where I won my biggest paddle-in wave. Yeah.
I mean, I just remember reading about the first time you surfed there, or the way you approached it. Right? It definitely wasn't like, I'm just going to jump in and paddle for every wave. What was your approach, and why did you approach Mavericks that way?
Well, I think I never really wanted to be a big wave surfer. It was something that happened over a long period of time, where slowly, session by session, I surfed bigger and bigger waves. And I met, there was a time when I was working in Fiji and Tavarua as a lifeguard, as a boatman. And Zach Wormout, who is one of the best Mavericks surfers, and he's been surfing Mavericks since the early 90s. He came out to Tavarua, and he had just won this big wave award, and me and Zach became good friends. Like, we started talking about surfing, and we got some bigger swell, and he was a very humble guy that I could tell had so much experience and knowledge, and he just started sharing a lot of this knowledge and stuff with me. And he said, you got to come up to Mavericks and surf, and because we got some bigger waves in Tavarua, and he said, you should come to Mavericks. I think you'll like it, because you're a regular footer, and I can fill you in on what you need. And my first reaction was like, hell no, I don't want to surf Mavericks. I'm not ready for it. And he pretty much, in the coolest way, just really laid out to me what I needed to do to be prepared for that, whether it was being in the best shape, and the equipment I needed, the certain buoy readings, the type of swell, the time of year, all these things that he slowly started teaching me, just everything I needed to know before I came up. And so really, when I first started surfing Mavericks, for I'd say the first couple years, I didn't really catch any waves, because I was just really out there because of, my friendship with Zach, and I also was in really good paddling shape, so I knew I could make it into the lineup paddling from the beach, because it's about a 45-minute paddle from the beach out to Mavericks. And so I really wanted just to watch Mavericks, and when I got out there, I was even more blown away than almost any experience in my life, because there was these guys in these full suits and booties and hoods, and I could barely see their faces, and they weren't sponsored surfers, and they were catching consistently massive, huge 30, 40, 50, whatever, huge waves, and people I'd never heard of. And there was these just unknown chargers catching the craziest waves, doing it because they, dedicated their life or their passion to Mavericks. So when I got out there, I realized I was even kind of less prepared, and so I really wanted to spend time watching the wave and watching how the best locals do it, because Mavericks has locals just like any other spot. They know exactly where to sit, and so I really just watched how they approach the wave. And after a couple years, I slowly started catching, the first, or I'd catch one wave or two waves the first season or second season, and then I just slowly started catching more and more waves that gradually built up to my XXL wave. But a lot of it was I was just incredibly humbled by the spot, the level of surfing out there, and that and I knew I could drown out there. I was aware of how dangerous it was. So, and when I first started surfing Mavericks, there wasn't nobody was wearing any type of padded vest or self-inflating life jackets. So if you caught a wave, you really had to have the understanding that, or you have to just know that you can survive that not only that wipeout, but if your leash breaks, you have to be ready to swim in to shore with no help. So there's stuff like that where I knew immediately when I first started going out there that if I wiped out, my leash broke, I wasn't confident enough to either survive the wipeout or swim in by myself. And over time, I started becoming more and more comfortable, and as comfortable as I could be in those situations.
That sounds so gnarly, to lose your leash and have to swim in at Mavericks and big Mavericks. That just sounds ridiculous. I mean, I've seen I went to watch Mavericks break, and I was standing up on the cliff, and it's way out there. Like, that's insane. Yeah. And you'd be fighting the current. There'd be white waters. It would just be wild. Did you ever have to do that?
I had to swim in. I have had to swim in. I broke my board in like 3 places on one wipeout one time, and I have had to swim in. I'd say only maybe once, maybe twice, but it really, I learned just a lot from Zach Wormout. He really also taught me about the buddy system, having someone with you. Because back then, with no self-inflating life jacket, no cell phones weren't out in the lineup. So, like, for example, one time I paddled out with Zach to Mavericks, and he loved to paddle out at sunrise, when it's pretty much dark out. So if it takes 45 minutes, by the time we get out there, we're out there at first light. And when we were going out there, we got caught by a big set. We didn't know where the lineup was, and his leash string broke. And I saw him swimming, and I actually paddled in and grabbed his board, paddled it to him. And since we had such a good friendship, and since he had taught me so much, I had 2 leash strings on my board. So I took off one of my leash strings, gave it to him. He put it on his board, and then we both paddled back out. And so it's kind of being prepared for these things that maybe I didn't know anything about, but he taught me a lot, so that just the worst wouldn't happen.
Yeah, it seems like having a mentor like that is just invaluable. Like, it's so key. And the problem, well, it's not a problem, but or one of the issues is, I think, in surfing, not even necessarily talking about surfing like proper big waves, but in surfing, there's a lot of people that are just starting to learn things on their own, and they don't have that, that mentor to teach them, hey, make sure not to drop in on people, make sure not to do this, make sure not to do that. But in the big wave realm, it becomes even more crucial to have a proper mentor or someone that can teach you and show you the ropes, right?
Yeah, it's really important to have that. And I guess the one benefit with social media and stuff like that, you can kind of figure out who the locals are at certain spots, and you can kind of reach out and either ask permission or ask them like questions or say, hey, can I tag along with you? I don't know what I'm doing, and whether or not they get back to you, but at least you have kind of opportunities to know who certain people are, or you can reach out to certain people about safety protocol, like, hey, I'm going to be going out to this certain big wave spot. Who can I pay? Who's the water safety? Who can I pay to watch me and take me out there and teach me? Because there's even certain people that are doing that at certain big wave spots where if you say, hey, I got money, who can I pay to take me out there or watch over me while I surf? And most of the time, these people who are doing that have the knowledge to tell you, don't paddle around that person, don't sit underneath the pack, don't do these certain things, because it comes down to it's not worth ruining all your relationships to catch a wave, and just being smart and having etiquette.
Right. Yeah. Now that sounds like really good advice. Would you? So we're talking about Mavericks, so I figure I should show everybody. We'll get a higher quality version, but this was like that wave that I think you. I don't know if you can see it. This is the the wave that got you that XXL award. It looks freaking death-defyingly horrendous and scary. It's wild. I mean, it's like a literal mountain. I can't even fathom surfing a wave this big. I mean, I've surfed some bigger waves, but this is order of magnitudes bigger than that. What was surfing that wave like? I mean, can't even imagine.
Yeah, catching that wave, that was the best wave of my life, for a lot of different reasons. First, when I tried to paddle out that day, I couldn't coordinate with anybody, so I paddled out by myself from the beach, and it took me about, almost an hour or 45 minutes to paddle out to the lineup, even longer maybe, and I kept getting cleaned up by these closeout sets in the channel. And every single time I got cleaned up, it would just send me super far in. So I had two different moments that I remember where I was sat up on my board and I had some doubt and kind of was just like, do I give up and just go in, and just call it a day and just give up on this? Or do I just keep moving? And both times I just said, let's do this. I really want to be out there, and I have what it takes to be out there, and I'm in good enough shape, even though I bailed like 30 times or even longer just to get out there. So it was something where I had these moments of self-confidence. It took me so long to get out there. By the time I got out into the lineup, it was this incredible feat for me. Like couldn't believe I made it out there, and I had kind of some extra confidence just from making it through the impact zone. And sometimes on the biggest swells at Mavericks, it does close out the channel where you have to bail a lot of waves just to even get to the lineup. So, and by the time I got to the lineup, I was feeling confident, and actually that wave was my first wave of the day, and I felt like something just, the universe just gifted me that wave, and it kind of came right to me. I normally don't sit really deep with the pack, and I was sitting a little bit farther outside and wide and outside, which I talk about in my book, and the wave just kind of really just came right to me.
My God. Do you even remember riding the wave, like going down the face of the wave, or is it just like lost in the ether or something?
I mean,
like
I remember, but a lot of times on these big wave surfing, big waves, you're not like looking up at the horizon. You're looking down at your board, and you're looking at the curve of the wave so that you can adjust your line. And so like whether you're knifing it on kind of rail, like if it's kind of slabbing out more, or if your board is flat on the face and you're going straight down with the speed. So there's, I do remember the wave. I remember being halfway down and the wave spit. I remember feeling the spit on me, and just, I rode the wave like really far, and knew when I kicked out that it was, the biggest and best wave of my life.
How did it feel when you kicked out, knowing that was like the biggest and best wave of your life? I mean,
Oh, it was incredible. You know, it's one of the best feelings I've had in my life, and a lot of these things that I've done, even that that specific wave, I did it for myself, and it felt really good to have accomplished this thing. You know, to catch that wave and to not give up on the paddle out and to see it through and really catch the wave. You know, and I didn't immediately go up to anybody, and there's a lot of boats and jet skis. I didn't go up to anybody and say, "Did you see my wave?" or anything. I just really, you know, sat in the channel and like soaked it in, and, you know, put my hands in the water and really tried to feel, you know, and just be thankful. You know, I was really, really thankful for that, because I had, you know, spent probably 5 years or 4 years of not ever, you know, out there without catching a wave like that. So to spend that amount of time trying to be patient and to catch that, and going out there with no expectations. I didn't go out there and tell myself, you have to catch a wave. This is, you know, I didn't put this pressure. Like, I wasn't hard on myself. I was just grateful to be out there, and then that wave came. So it just everything came together for me.
My God, that's like the culmination of your entire life, and just crystallized in that one wave. And oh man, I mean, I look at that wave and it just looks so crazy. And then for you to also get that photograph and to get the recognition, that's just incredible that it all came together like that. And
yeah, I mean, I you know, felt, I was really also humbled by it, because, you know, when I won that XXL award, I definitely still had a feeling that there's a lot of really, really great big wave surfers that committed their life to big wave surfing that never got the recognition I had from that wave, and all these people that, whether they wanted it or not, weren't getting the recognition for it. So, you know, as much as I did it for myself, I, you know, definitely pay respect to all the people that came before me and laid the path for me, because there's, you know, to get recognition, you know, now social media, people get these instant kind of things where they're, you know, kind of back then, there was a lot of big wave surfers that committed their lives to big wave surfing. They got lots of waves like that never really got a picture in the magazine or won an award. So I was really grateful, and just really, really gave me the confidence and opened my mind to more possibilities.
Yeah. Sounds like after that wave, your career kind of just like, it seems like it just catapulted, and then you're going and surfing with Twiggy in South Africa, and then you're going to Ireland, and you're going to, you know, surfing Nazare and with Kai Lenny and Nick Von Rupp, and just doing all sorts of crazy stuff. That must have been such a wild transformation of your life, to go from, you know, unknown charger to now you're like in the big leagues when it comes to big wave surfing. Yeah,
it was definitely a huge moment and huge thing for me to start building that momentum for my big wave career. I've seen Bill Sharp, who was running the XXL awards at the time. I've seen him a lot since, and told him how thankful I was that he put on that event, and really gave me the opportunity to like win that award, and how much that award helped me in my career and my life and my path to trying to be the best big wave surfer. So I've told Bill Sharp, he's the one that was running the event, like how much that had helped me, and, you know, I was just grateful for that. So yeah, it was really helpful for me, because I probably, even if I didn't win the award, would have continued to try to push myself in big wave surfing and trying to be a professional surfer. But winning that award really helped me with sponsors, people recognizing me, and just trying to really get money and travel fund so that I could challenge myself and start going to all the other big wave spots in the world.
Yeah. And it sounds like you went on some crazy adventures. The funny thing is, the one that stands out to me a lot is like when you talk about surfing in Ireland, and then how you like roll up, and then you're like, okay, what did you expect from these? How did you know that these guys were going to be a little different? And then I think you went and asked them like, hey, where do I hang my wetsuit? And they're just like, oh, you just hang it outside, and it's literally snowing outside. And as a Northeast surfer, I can relate to that, because it snows and we go surfing in the snow, but I'm not going to hang my wetsuit outside because it's going to turn into a brick. But these guys are like, whatever. This is nothing. Like, if you're going to be tough and surf big waves, then why do we care about this? That's psycho to me.
Yeah, they were, it was Mickey Smith and Fergal Smith and Tom Lowe who I was with, and they were just a different breed of surfer that I'd ever experienced. They were so hardcore and they charged so hard, and it was so normal for them. Even that whole hanging the wetsuit out when it's outside when it was snowing. Fergal Smith told me he'd rather put on a suit that's covered in snow than a wetsuit, because when it's outside, when you hang your wetsuit up outside in the snow, it's pretty much dry. Where if you hang it up in, like, when it's raining, it's wet. So there's something to do with the snow or something. And then he also told me, the moment you start worrying about putting on a wet or cold wetsuit, you've already lost. Like, you're not going to make it. And so I just had to really just try to not complain really about anything, right. Even though I wasn't used to surfing in the snow or even getting like worked by big waves in snowy conditions. It's just a whole different dynamic. But I had to just mentally, I think he really taught me something about how important it is to be mentally prepared, and just think that, I don't know.
Just got to be hard. Just got to be super hard. Like these guys.
I guess.
Sounds psycho. Well, so then you eventually start transitioning to being a photographer, and there's two photos of yours that you put in here that really stood out to me, and I just was hoping to get your background on these two stories. So the first one, this is the one that was actually in the Surfer's Journal. I remember getting this copy and thinking like it was so beautiful, but this wave right here. Could you tell us a little bit about this photograph you took?
Yeah, when I went to, I started doing a lot of photography and big wave surfing, mostly because I had concussions, and then also I was pretty traumatized about my drowning experience, and I was just kind of too scared to talk about it, and so I really, and I didn't really tell anybody, but that was generally why I was shooting more than I was surfing. And I didn't really tell many people that, but that photo specifically at Nazare, I really owe to Nick Von Rupp, because I had spoken to him before I went to Portugal and Nazare, and I expressed to him I wanted to come over and document it and maybe surf it, even though I didn't really want to surf it, but I did want to document it and the scene there. And I spoke with Nick Von Rupp, and when I went over there, he lined me up with like a jet ski, whether if he was driving it or he'd have his driver Sergio drive me, and he just took care of me in a way that I will never forget. So I would have never captured that photo if it wasn't for Nick Von Rupp and him, because there's a lot of stuff with Nazare. They won't really let anyone out into the lineup. You have to be approved by the people there, like the Nazare Water Safety Patrol, and you have to know them, and not anyone can. You have to like really, if not know them or just get approved by the people there. And there's certain people that you get the okay from, but Nick made sure that it was okay. I mean, I went out with him, and even that specific photo was because Nazare is just a crazy wave that it's so consistently big. It's, breaks like 40 to 60 foot so consistently that when I went there, I knew I didn't want to surf it, because I committed most of my big wave surfing to paddle and surfing, and to me it looked like mostly a tow wave. And even though everyone's paddling big Nazare, you have to pay the price. You're getting caught inside by a lot of waves. There's specific kind of lineups and spots where it breaks, but most of the time, a lot of these big wave surfers that are out there paddling it get caught inside. So in that specific day, I'm pretty sure I had dropped off Nick to paddle in and start, paddle surfing it, in which he got like two really big waves that day. He paddled into them, and I just, buzzed the ski around to face the cliff so that I could kind of capture the sunrise along with the wave, and everything came together for that image. And I remember looking at the photo when I captured it, I knew it was really something special, and it eventually landed on the cover of Surfer's Journal. So really lucky that it was sunny offshore, a mega swell, and that Nick lined me up on the ski. Because but even though when I was out there, I was really scared, because I was wearing a self-inflating life jacket while I was shooting, but I still understood that if I got caught inside by a set or if the jet ski broke, that there's a chance I could drown out there, because even if you have a self-inflating life jacket, you could have a lot of waves before, or even there are a lot of waves could hit you and you could get held on for a long time before the water safety can catch you. And so even looking back, like right now, I probably won't go out there and shoot ever again. And I think I was still had some ego from my big wave career and thought I could handle some big beat downs. But now, even though I'm in great shape, I just don't think I would put myself in that situation for my own mental health.
I mean, I've been on that cliff looking at Nazare when it was probably, I don't know how big it was, but massive. And it's crazy because it just looks like a crazy wild beach break, except it's 60 foot and the waves are breaking all over the place. It just seems so crazy. And I just remember walking down and then seeing the white waters look like they were 20, 30 foot. It is the gnarliest looking place. What about this wave right here? This wave looks pretty insane as well. This is one of the photographs, the photograph after you included that one.
That was Francisco Porcello, and he's from Maui, and he is a full Jaws charger, has gotten some crazy barrels out there. He's a goofy footer. He's been coming to Mavericks for a long time too, but he towed into that wave, and that was a really big day at Mavericks. And I had gotten into the lineup with Matt Becker, who is a big wave surfer, and he has a jet ski, and he actually drove me out there, I'm pretty sure, that morning. And there was really big waves, like probably anywhere from like 40 to 50 foot coming in and breaking on the outer reef. And so the session started as a tow session, because I think that a lot of the paddle surfers weren't sure if they were going to be getting caught inside, and there's a lot of people there like Kai Lenny, and a lot of great surfers were there towing at first light. So that was before the sun had come up, and there's a couple waves in a row, and Francisco just, when he got whipped into that wave and he pulled up into the bowl, he just looked so casual and comfortable, even though he's making like this a face like he's just, I don't know, he looks really casual. Yeah, he's I think amazed by the fact that he was almost soul arching in the bowl at Mavericks. And it really, he's someone that's committed his life to big wave surfing, and it showed on that wave when he, backside pulled up into the bowl at Mavericks on like a 40-foot wave or 50-foot wave, and made it look really casual, which is, I think, some of the greatest big wave surfers, when you, if they can make a big wave look like, or if they don't look like when they make it look really easy, I think is what I'm getting at, is when you know that they have the time and put in the time and experience.
Right. I mean, he just looks like he does. The expression on his face isn't one of fear. It's more of just like wonder. Like, this is so sick. Like, I can't believe I'm here right now. This is incredible. And I think what makes, for me anyway, this photo so dramatic. I mean, obviously you can see all this energy, and you can see that chop on the face, which to me looks kind of terrifying, because like you're riding, that chop is hitting your board, and you have to like hold through with that chop. But then what's crazy is, you can see the other side of the barrel, and it just looks like it's like a football field of distance, like between those two ends, and it just makes this thing look like the craziest cavern ever. And to ride that is just, I have some other images from that same set, and he's one of the guys that, Francisco is one of the surfers that has put in so much time, and he just always kind of blew my mind when it came to catching so many consistent big waves and then paddling out with a smile on his face. Like, he did that a lot. He caught a lot of big waves, took these crazy beat downs, and it always made me question, because I might have one bad wipeout and I would call it a day at times, because I knew that I probably wouldn't have the energy to take another wipeout. And so I was a pretty cautious big wave surfer, and he's just a person that he
will get like a huge barrel and then come out and take a wipe out and then surf for another 2 or 3 hours. And so he's built different, that dude.
Yeah, he's just frothing. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So you made Waking Up in the Sea, and I just want to hear what's next for you.
What's next for me? I'm working on my second book, which I'm really happy to talk about. When I made Waking Up in the Sea, my first book, I'd originally written upwards of 14 chapters, and I narrowed it down to 7. And so I have a lot. My second book, really happy just to share that it'll have more chapters. There'll be some stuff that's I included in my first book, but there's a lot of stuff I didn't talk about also in terms of my concussions and my mental health. I'll probably talk more about the stuff that specifically helped me recover from concussions and helped me get through maybe a tough time with my mental health and these types of things. So not only will it be kind of like something like a memoir with more chapters, but I'll also talk about specific things that helped me through, my concussion and then also like maybe an update on my health, kind of what I've been going through since, this book's come out. And because everything I've been working at, I've been constantly trying to share how I'm doing, how I'm helping myself, just really in order to like not only share about like my big wave career, but tell people that might be going through a tough time with concussions and certain stuff like that. Because I had a lot of response with my book, and people asking me kind of what I did to bounce back from a lot of this stuff. And I wasn't really ready to talk about a lot of this stuff for a number of reasons, but now I'm definitely, I've been doing better and better, and every year and every month, every day I feel just better and better. So I just want to kind of share with people how I got to this, and not only just talk about my career, but maybe try to give some advice on how to help people.
That sounds great. It sounds like a gift to the world, and really hopefully it can help other people that are going through hard times, whether it be concussions or just things in general, right? I think that sounds amazing. Well, we'll work towards finishing this up, but I mean, I've surfed with you at Wind and Sea. You don't surf only big waves, you also surf all sorts of waves, and you're a really good surfer. So how about this? What is your best piece of advice surfing wise for a beginner surfer?
Oh, the best advice, probably there's a couple of things. I'll probably say one or two, but if you're going to surf, just understand that this is kind of a lifelong pursuit that takes a while to get good at. And you might be good at other sports, or you might be in good shape, but this is something pretty different in terms of your balance, your stance, and your ocean awareness. And that it might take you a couple years to catch a good wave, or you could just be in tune with the ocean and catch waves immediately. But it's something that if you have low expectations and just want to be out there and you really enjoy the ocean, that I think I have a couple of things, but just to have low expectations and just to be grateful to be out there in the ocean. And if you have these high expectations, like you want to jump on a shortboard and do turns, that's probably 10 years out. It might take 5 or 10 years for you to be able to maneuver a shortboard good enough to be able to do turns or do an aerial. So it's really, there's certain people like Kelly Slater and some other really good surfers and Kailani and all these people that make surfing look so easy and comfortable, but it's really a difficult sport. And a big part of surfing is just understanding the ocean and learning to read waves, learning about beach break versus rocky waves or reefs and stuff like that.
Yeah. And
and then also
really
I guess I was just going to add just to be aware of other surfers, and just understand that you have to work together, and that you just to not be in people's way, or just to share waves and not try to be super selfish about it.
Right. Yeah. And talking about surfing being this lifelong pursuit and not being too hungry about it. I feel like some people might listen to that piece of advice because you said it might take you 10 years to be able to do turns properly. And I think for some people, maybe that will bum them out. But I think what people should realize is like that process of being a beginner at something is actually what makes surfing so fun, because that's when you're rapidly improving. I think that's when you have the most fun, right? That journey of improving. And sure, it might take you a long time to do turns, but I think that journey is what makes it so exciting. And I look back to when I was a beginner at a lot of things, and those were actually some of the most fun times that I had versus when I achieved a level of competence and then it became more like routine. So, I think that's really good advice.
Yeah.
And what about for the intermediate surfer then?
Oh, the intermediate surfer? Oh, the best advice? I mean, there's certain things that's important with your stance. Having a wide stance can be good at times if you're starting to surf, I don't know, bigger waves or... I guess for the more advanced surfer, I guess when you start getting better, understanding etiquette in the lineup is very important. So when you're first starting, you might just be concerned with popping up and riding waves in, but once you start getting out into the lineup, that you should understand that there's rules to the lineup, and with that is just not snaking people. And if someone's been waiting a long time, like, don't be selfish and not, like I mentioned, like, don't ruin relationships to catch a wave. Try to be friendly with people in the water, and just understand that there's kind of rules, and that certain spots have locals. And even though like these locals know exactly where to sit in the lineup because they've surfed there for 20 years, and just to be respectful of other people, because there's a lot of locals at a lot of different surf spots. And if you paddle out and you're like by yourself and you're friendly, almost a lot of people will be nice, like almost everywhere. It's just understanding etiquette of not getting in their way or not thinking that you can go paddle deeper than them because they don't know where they're at, and certain things that just being not selfish in the lineup, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Well, Derek, thanks for joining. This was such a treat to have you on, and I'm pretty sure anybody that's watching or listening is pretty stoked. We had the most amazing discussion. So I just want to say thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you, dude. I really appreciate it.
Hey everyone, it's Van. Hopefully you've been enjoying the podcast. Hopefully you've been listening to some good stories, getting some good tips that are helping you improve as a surfer. If so, make sure to subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review. It'll only take you literally a few seconds, and share it with your friends. That's the best way you can support me so I can continue to create awesome new content for you. So thanks.